Welcome to Epic World History. In the heart of a frozen city, destiny was decided. From the summer heat of 1942 to the winter grave of 1943, Stalingrad became the stage where empires clashed and humanity endured the unendurable. Across fire and ice, courage and despair, the fate of the world hung in the balance. The summer of 1942 marked one of the darkest chapters in the Second World War. On the Eastern Front, flames of destruction stretched for miles as Nazi Germany pressed deep into Soviet territory. Emboldened by victories across Europe, Hitler turned his gaze toward Stalingrad, a city that carried Stalin's name and pride along the Volga River. Capturing it meant more than a strategic gain. It symbolized crushing the heart of Soviet resistance itself. As German panzers thundered across the endless steppes, Soviet soldiers and civilians prepared for the storm to come. The air trembled with tension, destiny closing in. The Battle of Stalingrad was about to begin, a brutal clash of empires and ideologies that would test the limits of courage and change the course of World War II forever. By the middle of 1942, Hitler's ambitions burned hotter than ever. Operation Barbarossa had failed to crush the Soviet Union, but the Führer believed that taking Stalingrad would achieve what his generals could not: breaking Soviet morale and seizing the oil fields of the Caucasus. To him, the city's name was a challenge, a duel between dictators. Confident in his lightning warfare, the German High Command envisioned a swift and decisive victory. The Luftwaffe rained destruction from above, turning neighborhoods into seas of fire and rubble. Yet, through the smoke and ruins, the Soviets stood unyielding. What began as a confident advance transformed into a brutal struggle for survival, where every ruined house and shattered street became a fortress. Stalingrad was no longer just a city. It was Hitler's greatest gamble and the beginning of his downfall. Before the storm of war, Stalingrad stood as a proud city of labor and steel, a symbol of Soviet industrial might. Its massive tractor plants and steel mills roared day and night, producing the machines that powered the Red Army. The people of Stalingrad were workers, builders, and dreamers who shaped the backbone of their nation. But when the war reached their gates, these same hands that once built tractors now built weapons. Men went to the front, while women, children, and the elderly turned factories into fortresses. Even under constant bombardment, the machines kept running, and tanks rolled off the assembly lines through shattered roofs. The city's spirit became unbreakable, forged in fire, metal, and the will to endure. Stalingrad was no longer just a city of steel. It had become a city of courage. By late August 1942, the German war machine reached the very edge of Stalingrad. The Sixth Army, commanded by General Friedrich Paulus, advanced with clockwork precision, backed by artillery barrages and the ceaseless roar of Luftwaffe bombers. Streets once alive with workers now thundered with explosions, smoke, and gunfire. Confident in their strategy, the Germans believed the city would fall within weeks. Yet on the other side, General Vasily Chukov and his Soviet defenders refused to yield. They fought from every building, basement, and shattered wall, turning the ruins into strongholds. Behind them, the Volga River served as both salvation and peril, a lifeline for supplies, but under constant fire. Step by step, the Germans pressed forward, but every block claimed a terrible price. Stalingrad had begun to consume the invaders, one street at a time. By September 1942, Stalingrad had become a blazing inferno. Luftwaffe bombings had reduced entire districts to ashes, creating a nightmarish landscape of burning steel and shattered stone. But amid the ruins, the Soviets refused to surrender. They adapted to the chaos. Every broken wall, every collapsed building became a fortress. Snipers, machine gunners, and sappers transformed the city into a maze of resistance. The Germans called it Rattenkrieg, the Rat War, a fight so close that enemies battled for hallways, staircases, and single rooms. Smoke darkened the sky, fire illuminated the nights, and the air reeked of dust and despair. Stalingrad was no longer just a battleground. It was a furnace of endurance, a living hell where the fate of nations burned alongside the city itself. Amid the smoking ruins of Stalingrad, a new and silent kind of warfare took hold, the sniper's duel. From the shattered factories and crumbled walls, Soviet marksmen watched, waited, and struck with deadly precision. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were hunters in a city of ghosts. Among them stood Vasily Zaitsev, a name that became legend. With patience carved from steel and eyes sharp as frost, he hunted enemy officers one by one, spreading dread through the German ranks. His courage became a rallying cry for the defenders of the city. To the Soviets, these snipers symbolized defiance itself, proof that even in ruin and despair, the human spirit could aim, endure, and prevail. In the heart of Stalingrad, the Germans quickly realized that conventional warfare no longer applied. Tanks jammed between ruins, artillery fire tore apart both sides, and battles shrank to the size of rooms. Each building became its own war. The Red October factory thundered with gunfire. Pavlov's house stood like a fortress, and the grain elevator rose as a symbol of defiance. Soviet troops clung to these places with unbreakable resolve, defending every stairwell, every window, every floor. Reinforcements crossed the Volga through storms of fire and steel, carrying ammunition and hope. Stalingrad was no longer just a military operation. At the very core of Stalingrad's defense stood General Vasily Chukov, a man forged for this battle. Gruff, stubborn, and fiercely determined, Chukov commanded the 62nd Army with an iron will. Where others saw chaos, he saw opportunity. His strategy was simple yet brutal. Stay close to the enemy so their artillery could not be used. "We will hold Stalingrad or die here," he told his men. His voice echoed through bunkers and ruins alike, inspiring endurance where hope seemed lost. Under Chukov's command, the city transformed into a living fortress, fueled by courage and sacrifice. In him, the Soviet spirit found its perfect embodiment, unbreakable, disciplined, and utterly fearless. As the battle stretched into November, winter descended upon Stalingrad with merciless force. Temperatures plunged far below freezing, turning weapons brittle and breath into mist. German soldiers, trapped in the ruins, faced hunger, frostbite, and despair. Lacking warm clothing or supplies, entire divisions froze where they stood. Yet the Soviets, born of this harsh land, endured with grim resolve. The Volga River turned to solid ice, opening a frozen bridge for reinforcements to cross under fire. Snow blanketed the dead that lined the streets, while black smoke from burning tanks drifted across a pale sky. Stalingrad had become a city of silence, frozen in death, yet burning in spirit. The Soviet heart, though buried in snow, still refused to die. On November 19, 1942, the frozen silence of the steppe erupted into thunder. The Red Army unleashed Operation Uranus, a masterstroke of strategy and surprise. Instead of striking the city itself, Soviet forces attacked the exposed flanks held by Romania and Hungary, the weaker allies of Nazi Germany. Waves of Soviet tanks surged across the snow, smashing through the enemy lines with overwhelming force. Within days, the trap closed. The German 6th Army, over 250,000 men under General Paulus, was surrounded. The conquerors of Europe now found themselves prisoners of their own ambition. The hunters had become the hunted. For the first time in the war, Hitler's unstoppable machine had been outmaneuvered, cornered, and encircled on the Eastern Front. The German 6th Army found itself cut off from all supply lines. Hitler forbade retreat and promised air resupply, a fatal mistake. The Luftwaffe, overwhelmed by weather and Soviet fire, could deliver only a fraction of what was needed. Food ran out, ammunition dwindled, and despair set in. German soldiers slaughtered their horses for meat. Wounded men froze in field hospitals without medicine. Stalingrad had become a tomb for an entire army. Still, Hitler demanded they hold their ground, refusing to face reality. For the encircled Germans, life became a slow death. Temperatures dropped below 30 degrees Celsius, and blizzards buried the dead and the living alike. Rations consisted of frozen bread and scraps. Soldiers burned books, furniture, even their own equipment for warmth. Disease spread rapidly. Yet propaganda from Berlin claimed victory was near. Meanwhile, Soviet loudspeakers echoed across the front, urging surrender. The men inside the pocket began to understand they had been abandoned by their own Führer. In December 1942, Field Marshal Erich von Manstein launched Operation Winter Storm, an attempt to break the encirclement and rescue Paulus's army. German panzer divisions advanced through blizzards, fighting desperately to reach Stalingrad. For a brief moment, hope flickered. But Soviet forces, reinforced and well-prepared, stopped the relief 50 miles short of the city. Manstein ordered withdrawal. The 6th Army was doomed. The ring of steel around Stalingrad tightened once more. The winter of 1942 brought a cruel holiday for the trapped soldiers. On Christmas Eve, they sang carols and bombed out buildings, their breath freezing in the air. Letters home spoke of hunger, frostbite, and fading faith. Supplies were gone, and the wounded begged for mercy. Soviet artillery never stopped. For many, that Christmas night was their last. Stalingrad had become a graveyard lit only by fire and despair. By January 1943, the German Sixth Army was a shadow of its former strength. Out of 250,000 men, fewer than 100,000 remained capable of fighting. Soviet tanks closed in from all sides. General Paulus, now promoted to Field Marshal by Hitler, was told to fight to the last bullet. No German field marshal had ever surrendered. But starvation and hopelessness broke the will to resist. Stalingrad's end was near. On February 2, 1943, silence fell over the ruins. The last German forces surrendered. General Paulus, once a symbol of Hitler's pride, laid down his arms rather than die for a lost cause. Over 90,000 German soldiers marched into Soviet captivity. Only a few thousand would ever return home. The once mighty Wehrmacht had suffered its most devastating defeat. Stalingrad belonged to the Soviet Union. The Battle of Stalingrad left a staggering toll. Nearly 2 million soldiers and civilians were killed, wounded, or missing. The Volga ran red with blood, and the city itself was reduced to ashes. But from the ruins rose a story of endurance. The people of Stalingrad had endured the unendurable. Their sacrifice became a symbol of Soviet resistance and the beginning of Nazi Germany's downfall. Stalingrad marked the turning point of World War II. After this defeat, the German army would never regain the initiative on the Eastern Front. The Soviets began their relentless push westward, liberating city after city. The myth of Nazi invincibility was shattered. The world saw that the tide had turned. From the frozen banks of the Volga began the long road to Berlin. In the years that followed, Stalingrad became a symbol of courage and sacrifice. Monuments rose across the Soviet Union, honoring those who fought and fell. For survivors, memories of hunger and fire never faded. The world learned that victory often demands unthinkable endurance, and that tyranny can be broken, no matter how powerful. Stalingrad's name would forever stand for resilience in the face of annihilation. Today, the Battle of Stalingrad remains one of the most studied and revered moments in military history. It was not only a battle for a city, but for the soul of a nation, a struggle that decided the fate of millions. In the silence of Volgograd, the wind still whispers through the ruins, carrying echoes of sacrifice, courage, and triumph. Stalingrad will forever remind humanity that even in the darkest hours, hope and resistance can change the course of history.